you got to worry about inverse condemnation. You got to worry about the taking of property. If Dan Welling's here, the floodplain coordinator, says, no, you can't do that. You just can't do it. He's opening himself up. You're telling me you can't do something on property, and that's what people would think. And that's the way they take it. If you tell somebody they can't do something to their property, you're taking it. But if he goes by the ordinances, you can't put that building in place unless you elevate it, anchor it, and put it on reinforced piers. That's telling them how to do it the right way. And that keeps Doddridge County from getting, lawsuits in the future. So that's one thing I teach when I do a lot of teaching on floodplain manager. Don't tell them not to do it, but tell them you can't do it unless you do this. You can do it as long as you elevate it.
But as you said, when you say you can't tell them not to do it, if there is no reason for them to legitimately do something in a floodplain when there are other opportunities to do it elsewhere, this won't leave that. This won't leave that. This won't leave that as an option.
If there's an alternative way, we'd love to see it.
Right. And that's
the only way. If he sees something that's not reasonably safe for flooding, that's when he can say, no, you cannot do this. If it's not reasonably safe, or it could cause harm to your neighbor or yourself, that's when you say no.
And then what kind of appeals process is set up if one person makes that decision?
It's all spelled out. It's long. The appeals process is in there 7.9 or 8.1.
8.1. I believe that the ordinance that you referred to in the lawsuit in Wood County partially was based on zero fill in the floodplain.
I think it was more...
and it was a question of, did they have the right to enforce the floodplain ordinance? That's according to an OES director from Wood County. They allow no fill in the floodplain. Zero.
It passed.
That's going above regulation, above the requirements, which is okay as long as they can do it. That's great.
I can only tell you that this is done in many other parts of the country, particularly on the coast,
right,
where there's a lot of flooding in areas, and it's been held illegal every time.
The main thing in Wood County was the trailer park.
Right.
There was a trailer park where they wanted to take old out, put new in, didn't want to go by the ordinance.
Right.
And they challenged it.
That's
and
right.
the ordinance was shown constitutional.
What percentage of the Doddridge County households are covered with flood insurance?
That's a good question, and I wish I'd have printed it out for you, and I apologize I didn't.
We have that.
It's a program at the office, and I can print it out and I can send it to your county commission, and they can have it for the next meeting, I promise you. If you want it, I will make sure it's done. I can just tell you how many insurance policies are in force, and just some general information. I cannot give specifics out to Joe Smith as this much.
I just wondered, what percentage are we dealing with on the floodplain?
We know in West Virginia, of all the people in the floodplain households, only 13% of them have flood insurance. All of them should. The national average.
But it's their choice.
It's their choice.
It's what?
Their
it's
choice.
Their choice. Unless they're get a bank loan, and for as long as they have a bank loan, if they're in the floodplain, they will have flood insurance. So it's not their choice at that point.
Yes, ma'am.
And then
yes, I have maybe kind of a unique situation because I had a house that was built in 1917. It used to be staying beside the floodplain, but since they changed that and put me in the floodplain. I know when there are floods, just under normal situations, it can just about surround my house. My house is raised. I haven't had it come into my house, but I've had close to coming into my house. I think if they do anything in the floodplain by me where I live at, it is going to affect me adversely, and I do not know now because they put a highway, Route 50, goes right by my house, and it changed all the levels of everything. I have different problems because of that. I do have flood insurance. If they start building in these floodplains, how is that going to affect me with my insurance? And, I'm going to be safe, but this is an old house. I can't afford to have the entire foundation redone and my house raised up. So how is that going to affect me with my insurance and my safety?
It should not. That's why this flood ordinance is in effect, to try to keep you safe.
Okay, so I have an option if they decide to do something like that to, would I approach Dan and say, hey, this is, my house is going to flood? This was where this last ordinance was written. I think
having a more detailed process to the permitting part where you will be notified if someone's getting ready to build in your area, and you'll be able to give them the opportunity to come and say, hey, I got a problem with this. You can't put this big center block building this close to my house. It's gonna cause me to flood.
Can they raise my insurance or take my insurance away from me because they're going to say it's too dangerous for you to?
Not because of someone else's problems, no, I don't believe
Because
so.
I mean, the house is almost 100 years old.
Well, the answer to your question is they may indeed raise your rates, but they can't take it away from you. Everybody, anybody who lives in the floodplain.
Yeah.
They're not gonna raise your rates because somebody
Under
put a
this,
big building.
there's no cherry picking, in other words, they have to give it to you.
But they can
Yeah.
So in other words,
Yeah.
it's allowing the floodplain to be disrupted. And it causes her to have higher rates than she's harmed.
Yes, I am.
So what recourse is there for her?
Civil suits. I mean, you know,
And what we need to have a floodplain ordinance that'll keep that from being necessary.
that's what this is doing.
And it has, and it should be spelled out.
There's supposed to be no rise in the floodway.
County ordinance is unconstitutional.
Yes.
Mr. Sneed, my name's Mariana Barham, and I think with the revised ordinance, the wording in it basically states that if activity is going to occur in a floodplain, that adjacent property owners be notified. And that just doesn't work because when you have a flood situation, if waters back up, the adjacent property might be a half an acre or less, but property owners upstream or downstream will be affected. So if it just states adjacent property, but perhaps we should discuss this when we go through the ordinance.
Yeah, I think that would be one of those specific issues, and I will tell you, Miss, I didn't catch your last name,
Barham.
that Dan Wellings and I have heard those complaints from several residents, and there actually is a revision of the definition to be more expansive, to cover that situation where the contiguous adjacent owner would get notice, but also other property owners that may be affected by a flood, depending on whether they have been identified in a floodplain survey. So there is an effort to expand that definition. So, Dan has heard the citizens on that issue, and we're working on language. I actually have proposed language that I can read at the appropriate time, and that's brought up. So we can, I'm just trying to move this so we're not here for 8 hours when we could be here for 2. You've been heard. Anyone else that has that issue, you've been heard, and there is going to be a change of the definition to be more expansive.
Okay, instead of me calling names off the sheet, you can just raise your hand and we'll recognize you for public comment. It's been working very fine so far. So we're still in public comment period. Yes, Ms. Beamer.
Could he go ahead and read the 7 items?
Do what?
The 7 items.
Yeah, I think it would be best. I mean, just trying to run the meeting so it's efficient. I'm not trying to interrupt you. Believe me, anyone that wants to speak can speak as long as you want to speak, but it just makes sense. If you have a general overall comment, either about the process or about the ordinance, that you be heard first. And then we'll start with Mr. Sneed, if the commission agrees, and he can go through those 7 points. And then anyone else that has any specific points of change, addition, deletion, etc., that those could be brought forward one time, where if you support that, perhaps we could ask you how many in the audience support that issue. You could raise your hand rather than restating it, because we'll be here for a day and a half if we don't control it in some manner. So that's the suggestion that I have, that if you have a general comment about the process of the ordinance generally, without going through those specific items, that you do that now, and then later we can go through the specific items.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a general comment about the process. I'm wondering if all of the comments that were received by Mr. Wellings and Mr. Tennant and the commissioners will be a part of public record. Will they be available to be viewed?
I would imagine they would be, would it not be?
They can be.
Okay.
Yes, they can
When
be
will
made.
they be available?
As soon as we can put them together. There's a stack of
mean, there's no secrecy to it. A lot of the comments go in themes that are generally around certain issues, one being the fee, one being the deposit, one being the way, one being, you know, I don't have a particular dog in the fight. I'm just trying to assist the commission to get a more perfect document that is really seen as the model for the rest of the state, if it meets with the needs and desires of the residents of Doddridge County. If Doddridge County, through their commissioners, vote to do something more aggressive than what FEMA is suggesting, they have a right to do that. You have a right to partition your commission to do that. But yes, we can put together all of the comments that have been received and make them available in the clerk's office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I want to, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to ask this here or later on, but there's another thing that concerns me, and I would really like to, I have a condensation tank on the other side of my road that is in the floodplain, and we haven't had a bad flood lately. That thing is, EQT owns it, and it has been washed off its foundation and hanging by 2 hoses over the side of the creek, by Arnold's Creek, twice now. And I've complained about EQT about it, and they haven't done anything. One guy said, oh yeah, we heard about that. And who do I approach for something like that? I don't think that thing should be there if it's being washed off its foundation.
Part of the oil and gas production?
Yes, well, it's a condensation tank.
So it's part of
like
oil and
a
gas?
pipeline, yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of oil and gas, it's not farming, it's not mining, it's oil and gas.
Yes.
It's called the Department of Environmental Protection, Office of Oil and Gas.
And I've got nothing done.
Then
We all agree, we all laugh.
Sure.
See you later.
Oil and gas has jurisdiction, that doesn't work, see a water.